Part 1, Chapter 11 of To Let. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Leanne Howlett. The Forsyte Saga 3, To Let, by John Galsworthy. Part 1, Chapter 11, Duet. That small emotion, love, grows amazingly when threatened with extinction. John reached Paddington Station half an hour before his time and a full week after, as it seemed to him. He stood at the appointed bookstall, amid a crowd of Sunday travellers, in a Harris tweed suit, exhaling, as it were, the emotion of his thumping heart. He read the names of the novels on the bookstall, and bought one at last, to avoid being regarded with suspicion by the bookstall clerk. It was called The Heart of the Trail, which must mean something, though it did not seem to. He also bought The Lady's Mirror and The Landsman. Every minute was an hour long, and full of horrid imaginings. After 19 had passed, he saw her with a bag and a porter wheeling her luggage. She came swiftly, she came cool. She greeted him as if he were a brother. "First class," she said to the porter. "Corner seats, opposite." John admired her frightful self-possession. "Can't we get a carriage to ourselves?" he whispered. "No good. It's a stopping train. After Maidenhead, perhaps. Look natural, John." John screwed his features into a scowl. They got in, with two other beasts, oh heaven! He tipped the porter unnaturally, in his confusion. The brute deserved nothing for putting him in there, and looking as if he knew all about it into the bargain. Fleur hid herself behind The Lady's Mirror. John imitated her behind The Landsman. The train started. Fleur let The Lady's Mirror fall and leaned forward. "Well?" she said. "It seemed about 15 days." She nodded, and John's face lighted up at once. "Look natural," murmured Fleur, and went off into a bubble of laughter. It hurt him. How could he look natural with Italy hanging over him? He had meant to break it to her gently, but now he blurted it out. "They want me to go to Italy with Mother for 2 months." Fleur drooped her eyelids, turned a little pale, and bit her lips. "Oh!" she said. It was all, but it was much. That "oh" was like the quick drawback of the wrist in fencing ready for riposte. It came. "You must go." "Go?" said John in a strangled voice. "Of course." "But 2 months! It's ghastly." "No," said Fleur, "6 weeks. You'll have forgotten me by then. We'll meet in the National Gallery the day after you get back." John laughed. "But suppose you've forgotten me," he muttered into the noise of the train. Fleur shook her head. "Some other beast," murmured John. Her foot touched his. "No other beast," she said, lifting The Lady's Mirror. The train stopped. 2 passengers got out, and 1 got in. "I shall die," thought John, "if we're not alone at all." The train went on, and again Fleur leaned forward. "I never let go," she said. "Do you?" John shook his head vehemently. "Never," he said. "Will you write to me?" "No, but you can, to my club." She had a club; she was wonderful. "Did you pump Holly?" he muttered. "Yes, but I got nothing. I didn't dare pump hard." "What can it be?" cried John. "I shall find out all right." A long silence followed, till Fleur said: "This is Maidenhead. Stand by, John." The train stopped. The remaining passenger got out. Fleur drew down her blind. "Quick!" she cried. "Hang out! Look as much of a beast as you can." John blew his nose and scowled. Never in all his life had he scowled like that. An old lady recoiled. A young one tried the handle. It turned, but the door would not open. The train moved. The young lady darted to another carriage. "What luck!" cried John. "It jammed." "Yes," said Fleur, "I was holding it." The train moved out, and John fell on his knees. "Look out for the corridor," she whispered, "and quick." Her lips met his, and though their kiss only lasted perhaps 10 seconds, John's soul left his body and went so far beyond, that when he was again sitting opposite that demure figure, he was pale as death. He heard her sigh, and the sound seemed to him the most precious he had ever heard, an exquisite declaration that he meant something to her. "6 weeks isn't really long," she said, "and you can easily make it 6 if you keep your head out there and never seem to think of me." John gasped. "This is just what's really wanted, John, to convince them, don't you see? If we're just as bad when you come back they'll stop being ridiculous about it. Only I'm sorry it's not Spain. There's a girl in a Goya picture at Madrid who's like me, father says. Only she isn't. We've got a copy of her." It was to John like a ray of sunshine piercing through a fog. "I'll make it Spain," he said. "Mother won't mind, she's never been there. And my father thinks a lot of Goya." "Oh! Yes, he's a painter, isn't he?" "Only water-colour," said John with honesty. "When we come to Reading, John, get out first, and go down to Caversham Lock and wait for me. I'll send the car home, and we'll walk by the towing path." John seized her hand in gratitude, and they sat silent, with the world well lost, and one eye on the corridor. But the train seemed to run twice as fast now, and its sound was almost lost in that of John's sighing. "We're getting nearer," said Fleur. "The towing path's awfully exposed. One more. Oh, John, don't forget me." John answered with his kiss. And very soon a flushed, distracted-looking youth could have been seen, as they say, leaping from the train and hurrying along the platform, searching his pockets for his ticket. When at last she rejoined him on the towing path a little beyond Caversham Lock, he had made an effort, and regained some measure of equanimity. If they had to part, he would not make a scene. A breeze by the bright river threw the white side of the willow leaves up into the sunlight, and followed those two with its faint rustle. "I told our chauffeur that I was train giddy," said Fleur. "Did you look pretty natural as you went out?" "I don't know. What is natural?" "It's natural to you to look seriously happy. When I first saw you I thought you weren't a bit like other people." "Exactly what I thought when I saw you. I knew at once I should never love anybody else." Fleur laughed. "We're absurdly young, and love's young dream is out of date, John. Besides, it's awfully wasteful. Think of all the fun you might have. You haven't begun even. It's a shame, really. And there's me. I wonder—" Confusion came on John's spirit. How could she say such things just as they were going to part? "If you feel like that," he said, "I can't go. I shall tell mother that I ought to try and work. There's always the condition of the world." "The condition of the world?" John thrust his hands deep into his pockets. "But there is," he said. "Think of the people starving." Fleur shook her head. "No, no, I never, never will make myself miserable for nothing." "Nothing? But there's an awful state of things, and of course one ought to help." "Oh, yes, I know all that. But you can't help people, John. They're hopeless. When you pull them out they only get into another hole. Look at them, still fighting and plotting and struggling, though they're dying in heaps all the time. Idiots." "Aren't you sorry for them?" "Oh, sorry, yes, but I'm not going to make myself unhappy about it. That's no good." And they were silent, disturbed by this first glimpse of each other's natures. "I think people are brutes and idiots," said Fleur stubbornly. "I think they're poor wretches," said John. It was as if they had quarrelled, and at this supreme and awful moment, with parting visible out there in that last gap of the willows. "Well, go and help your poor wretches, and don't think of me." John stood still. Sweat broke out on his forehead, and his limbs trembled. Fleur, too, had stopped, and was frowning at the